US President Donald Trump has once again taken aim at South Africa's land reform policies, claiming they lead to the victimization of white people. He has also cast doubt on his attendance at the upcoming G20 Summit later this year. This follows the absence of US Secretary of State Marco Rubio from the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in February. Now, the US is next in line to assume the presidency of the G20 bloc. In a brief response, the International Relations Department says government is compelled by the Constitution to protect the rights of all citizens regardless of their race. Joining me now to unpack this is international relations expert Brooks Spector. Brooks, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. It seems South Africa, despite its best diplomatic approach to this matter, certainly not succeeding in changing the narrative in the mind of Donald Trump of this land grab, apparently, that is happening, targeting white people in South Africa.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you. I mean, getting inside the mind of Donald Trump is, that's a topic for a discussion. I can only assume that somehow he has now wedded himself to the idea that there is this great replacement of white South Africans. There's genocide, there are farm seizures, there is killing, there is terrible mayhem. And despite any evidence to the contrary, or all evidence to the contrary, and despite the protestations of the South African government, he has now wedded himself to this view. And having said that, that means that he is reluctant increasingly to come here and carry out the usual participation, nothing exceptional about it, of the United States in the G20, which it was instrumental in creating in the first place. And as your introduction points out, notably the U.S. is next in line to chair it, which means that the chairmanship would be handed over to Donald Trump on behalf of the United States after the November meeting in which Cyril Ramaphosa is chairing. I can only figure that this is part of a larger effort on his part to cast doubt on his attendance and therefore ratchet up the stakes in placating him so that he will come. Perhaps even, and this is pure speculation on my part, perhaps even he will elicit from Ramaphosa some sort of a statement that says we are taking into cognizance the protection and need for protection of all farmers and white farmers in particular, and that land will be handled in a judicious and legal manner, and that therefore Donald Trump will be able to claim some sort of a victory, and then taking the victory lap, the Air Force One lands at Tambo Airport, and off we go. Or he's using this as a way of extracting concessions from the G20 as a gathering. But since it's not an institution per se, it's kind of hard to see how that will work. Or maybe he really means that he's not going to come because of the reasons he has stated, even if they are based on an illusion as opposed to reality. Donald Trump loves to play this kind of game, and those who watched him over the years in his real estate development life in New York know that this is how he plays his negotiation. And as we've watched over the last couple of weeks with the tariffs, this is in some way how he's doing it, although it's proved to be a little more recalcitrant for him than he had anticipated quite clearly. Yeah. So I don't take this as a final word that he's not coming, but I sort of see it as okay, that was my move, what's yours?
So, I mean, if you have a look at the G20 countries, by and large, as you've mentioned, the tariffs are countries that have been hit by these tariffs, China being one that has, of course, reciprocated in its own way, while the others not so much. I mean, could that have anything to do with it, that coming into this meeting would certainly be him coming to meet with all these countries which he has slapped tariffs on? But also, what does that tell us about his attitude towards these multilateral platforms that other countries are part of?
Well, take your second half of your question first, that he doesn't have a high regard for multilateral forums in the first place, or multilateral institutions, and his his way of dealing with NATO, with the EU, with the UN should tell us that. On the other hand, and I still somehow, part of me thinks this, that this is the kind of event. I mean, all eyes in the world will be watching. Television networks from everywhere will focus in on that leaders' meeting. There'll be press in abundance. That it'll be too tempting an opportunity for him not to participate. Let me just say, maybe in his mind he'll compromise and send the vice president, J.D. Vance, instead, saying he's simply too busy dealing with other important issues, et cetera, et cetera. And that may be his way out. But I wish I had further feelings about that. That's speculation on my part. Nobody's going to tell me anything, until the day when Air Force One touches down at the airport and we see who gets off the plane.
What's the impact on the G20 gathering if he doesn't show up, if it doesn't touch ground at the OR Tambo International Airport, or a representative of the United States is in that gathering?
Well, it's going to have a negative effect on the institution. But again, it's an institution that is without a formal structure, in the sense that there's no real secretariat. Its final resolutions or statements don't have the force of law, international or domestic. They represent views, they represent appeals, they represent aspirations. And if that's true, what he is saying in effect is that I think it's more important to deal with the countries that are members of this gathering than it is to deal with the gathering itself. And therefore, as I say, maybe his way out will be to send J.D. Vance instead. In your intro, again, you noted that Secretary of State Marco Rubio didn't attend the foreign ministers meeting, but also the finance ministers meeting was unattended by the then newly appointed Secretary of the Treasury from the United States as well. It's going to be very awkward because the chairmanship moves on to the United States pretty much whether they want it or not, because that's been the tradition now over the last number of years. And in theory, there is a tripod of effort. There is the past country, there is the current country, and then there is the future country. The past was what? Brazil. The current is this country, and the future is the United States. I don't know. I somehow it just seems to me that he won't be able to ignore the idea of coming in front of all these people and giving them perhaps a tongue lashing.
Brooks, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. International Relations expert there, Brooks Spector.